A very warm good evening to all of you. Welcome to the 216th session of Centaur's webinar series for teachers. I hope all of you are keeping safe and staying healthy. The topic for today's webinar is how to make your lessons flip, not flop. And the facilitator for this session is Miss Neha Bahuguna. A very warm good evening to you, ma'am. A very warm welcome to you for this 216th session of Centaur's webinar series for teachers. Before I hand over the session to Neha ma'am, a brief introduction about our facilitator. Ms. Neha is an experienced educator with over 18 years of experience in constructing meaningful educational experiences aimed at allowing students to grow academically as well as intellectually. A math enthusiastic with a knack for making with math classrooms more enriching, lively and engaging through integration of art, dance, drama and innovative 21st century technological and pedagogical tools. Experienced in teaching, teacher mentoring, parent counseling, content writing, academic writing and resource management. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am, again. Before I hand over the session to our facilitator, I would like to inform all the teachers that they will receive participation certificates for this session. So please do fill out the feedback form that will be shared with you towards the end of the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, all the teachers. Thank you, Harsha, for giving such a comprehensive brief. So, before we start today's session, I'll just share my screen for all of you. And before we start discussing how to make our classes, our lessons flip and not flop, I would request each one of you to just close your eyes. And I urge you to think back, to travel back to a time when we were all students. And imagine yourself sitting at your desks, in your classroom, surrounded by your classmates. Is everybody with me? Let's close our eyes for a minute and try to imagine when we were students. So, what do you see in front of us? Please open your eyes. And I think it's highly likely that we all share quite a similar experience. Standing in front of us in our classroom used to be our teacher, a very loving, a very hardworking teacher, but she was giving us all that we needed for a particular subject. Is this the expectation from us teachers today? What do you think? Yeah? So, no, not at all. The educational landscape is changing each day. There are rapid changes in education. The focus is no longer on transferring knowledge, but it is on creating a transformed thinking young force. That has got great communication skills, wonderful collaboration activities, and who are competent in problem solving, in critical thinking. These are the must haves for the 21st century. Isn't that so? So, when the landscape is changing so much, it is time to flip the script. So, from being just a sage on the stage and the teacher talking, the teacher telling, the teacher filling the pail with the knowledge, it is time to be a guide by their side. So, when you hear the word flip, as teachers, our attention goes to the method of flipped teaching. So, that will be a small part of what we do today, but we will concentrate on these four things. First is providing flexible learning. Next would be what do we mean by a learning culture and how do we create one culture that is the most suitable for our students. I would be the intentional content that we create, we aimed at the learning outcomes that we are planning to achieve, the collaboration, the communication, the 21st century skills which we talk about. How do we build into our content? And the last that we would discuss would be productive assessment. So again, before we begin, I would like to request Harsha ma'am, to share a link with all of you, and just quickly write down 3 words that come to your mind when you hear the words flexible learning. So as teachers, what do you think flexible learning means? So it's a Padlet link, and ma'am will be sharing a link in the chat. The link is right there in the chat. Good evening, all the teachers. Let's add on to what we are ready. Yes, we have got our first response already. So ready to adapt. Just 3 words, 3 basic words. Students learn at their own pace. Wonderful. These are very nice words that we keep listening each day. Flexibility, adaptability. But let's see what teachers believe, what can happen. Yeah, interesting. Flexible learning should be interesting. Flexible learning timings. That is so nice. So students learn at their pace. Child paced, yes, it is as per the level. Very nicely written. Adaptive. Adaptive to a lot of things that we are going to discuss. And we have a wonderful answer. Easy, beautiful colors and inspiration. Holistic learning. So flexibility in a way that the entire gamut of activities can be covered. Interactive, motivated, wonderful. I think we have got the most interactive lot today. So we will have great flexible learning. Use of different aids. Interactive, practical, creative. No rules, no foundations. I love this one. All the students will also love it. So no rules, no foundations, fun learning with activities. Wonderful answers that we have today. Great. Empathetic learning. That's beautiful. Yeah, easy to be absorbed. Gaming is a wonderful tool. Very flexible, totally flexible, but we have to keep everything under control. Meet the different kinds of learners. Wonderful. Freedom, student pace. One very different answer we have received is ready to accept the views of children. Wonderful answer. So I expect we are going to have a great learning. Yeah, keep the answers pouring in. We'll continue trying to work on each one of these. So while flexible learning is all of these, yes, we want learning where there will be lot of freedom, there will be no rules, no foundations, but at the end of the day, we are in the class, we are helping them take out something that they already know, move from there to learning something new, so that at the end of the day, there is an exam also that they appear for. So when we as teachers really think of flexible learning, we also have the outcome in mind. So therefore, there are certain pedagogical, I should say, ideologies. It is not about doing some 3-4 strategies, doing some activities. It is about an entire thinking. So there is a very important psychological paradigm in cognitive study. It is not just in education. And it says that how a learner can actively construct his own meaning. So when you interact, when you are in a situation, everyone is capable enough of constructing some meaning. That is what in real life we say perspective. So what constructivism does in learning is are the 3 points. So I've tried to put in all that you were trying to say into these 3 basic guidelines. First is children. They learn by doing. So when we say doing, we are talking about activities, we are bringing gaming, We are talking about flexibility in terms of the pace, flexibility in terms of the different visual and the auditory and the kinesthetic and all the various learning ways that the teachers have. So, we are talking about this when we say children are active constructors of knowledge. Second point is children understand by reflecting on their experiences. So, what does this mean? This empowers our learners. It means essentially it believes that children can understand what we are trying to make them learn. They can understand what is the use, they can understand what they know and what they're trying to learn. We just have to present it in that way. And social integration is that they are happy and they are ready to listen to others' ideas. That was one point mentioned when all of you had answered. So when we feel flexible learning, uh, I would like to show you how we can bring in constructivism in our lessons. So I'll take a very specific example from the mathematics background. It's not that only mathematics can do constructivist approach. We can construct experiences. Everyone can do, but I'll take the most difficult subject so that if we can do it there, then we are definitely able to do it in all other disciplines. So, in a classroom, I would like to show you this when we are trying to introduce something new. So, this is right at the beginning of how we construct the lesson. So, we start by setting up an authentic experience. Everything that goes on in our classroom is experience. But what does authentic give it? The authentic word makes it a little real world, and there could be some problem which is a real problem which we are going to talk about. This helps students understand that what we are going to study has a real life use. Actually, because there is a use, that is why we are going to study. So, like usually in mathematics, we do a concept, we do a formula, we do a rule, and then we do questions, and then we do a statement problem. So, that is the approach that we follow. So, real life comes at the last. But sometimes, just to add that spark, just to add that feeling of yes, it is important, it is useful, setting up of an experience using visuals like this, where you exactly see that these are real life things and something about maths is being used here. So let's quickly see what is used. So once the teacher initiates through a visual to capture the attention or through some question, then what happens is asking a question like this. You can see on the screen, the examples are still real, but there is a prompt being offered. This is initiating a thinking space. So, what we have done is by asking this open ended question, there is flexibility in the answers. One of the responses was being open ended. So, that's the first thing we have taken up. So, when we initiate a space like this, then there are different set of ideas that will pop up. Each child will have something different to say, something different to offer. But now, as communication will grow, as dialogue grows in the classroom, some of those will be rejected, but some of those will be accepted, and that is how we will start building this bridge of knowing from where you are to where you want to be. So this is what initiates construction in constructivism. So let me take you to the next step, how we construct. So we gave them a visual, we captured the attention, then we created a thinking space, and now we are taking it forward by bridging it from the previous experience, from the previous knowledge, to let's see how we do it with the new. So, very simple questions asked. A right triangle. If you noticed these figures, all these pictures that we were seeing, they were talking about triangles. So, every child will be able to think and join the class discussion. So, notice we initiated thinking. We also sparked some interest. We captured their attention. And now we are enabling them to answer something. So it is not a tough thing to look, observe, and find. So this is one way the student is already with you. Now we get to the maths part of it. And still we are talking about what they already know. So, how do you identify the hypotenuse in a triangle, in a right triangle? So, provide the right triangle. I'll quickly show you an experiential activity since doing will be a very important part of what we plan to do. I'll quickly show you the activity. Give me a minute. So, why we introduce activities in the classroom is that now that they have started thinking, the thinking is right there. So, the thinking has started. Now it is time to make them try it out. Okay. So, there are different ways we can do these activities. One way would be we can try some online activities. There could be another way where we give them this triangular sheet. I'll just show it to you and I'll quickly take you back to the full screen mode. Yeah. So we show them different sets of right triangles and we ask them these questions. How can you identify the hypotenuse? What can be the possible measures of the angles? So right now they're just thinking. So like we said, when we initiate thinking, some different ideas will pop up. So open-ended. Some will be right answers, some will not be so right. So as you make them answer these questions, there will be a progression. So giving these handouts to the kids or drawing these different right triangles on the screen, on the blackboard, or asking them to draw different right triangles and share with their partners, and then trying to work out the answers to these questions is a very good starting point to include collaboration. Let's see how we build on further. We now, from the right triangles, talk about ratios. Two very different concepts. So, ratios are a different part of mathematics, commercial mathematics, while we showed them pictures where we had geometry. So, this creates a little what is happening? What am I going to think? So, though most of the kids would be able to answer these basic questions of ratios, and it will be a good point if there is an error. This is a great place uh, to find out the doubts and to work with them. So also notice the second question that has been asked. The first question, there are 7 shirts and there are 11 trousers. This is a very simple question of ratio. Again, everybody will be able to answer and there will be a feeling of self-worth and engagement. Notice the second question. My cone's a collection of toys. 3/8 of the cards are green and the rest are pink. Notice how we have introduced fractions also now. So this is intentional content. We showed them real life things. We made them start answering, telling whatever they knew. Then we took them to a concept of geometry. Then we took them to a concept of ratio. What do you think we are going to introduce? I am there on the chat if somebody could answer. What do you think we are going with constructing of such experience? We talked about triangles in the real world. We talked about specific right triangles. Then we are talking about ratio. So we will take this further with a brainstorming session. So after you have done so much in the class, let's go back to the right triangle and mix in the ratios with it. So the geometry is there, the ratio is there, and the right triangle came from the real world. So notice the construction. Notice there is flexibility because we have not given them a formula. We have not given them what is right, what is wrong. There is nothing right or wrong till now. But it is not no rules and it is not that we are deviating from what we planned, what is the outcome. So this is intentional content built in when we construct. So once we discuss like this, if the sides are say A, B and C units, what can be the possible ratios? Quite simply, ratio is a fraction. So the three numbers written in different fractions gives different ratios. From this, if we take them to the concept of the sides of a right triangle being the hypotenuse, the adjacent, and the opposite, we can encourage them to write the ratios in terms of the sides. So I'm sure all the maths teachers in our session today have very well guessed till now what we are going to introduce. So without the formula, without even mentioning the name, we have done a bit of introduction and the class is engaged because they knew everything till now. There's nothing new. So from here, we can take it further and scaffold the thinking. Scaffolding is just a support that we give. So this support could be given by giving them a solved problem and then working out similar problems, or it could be through questions like this. Questions are a potent tool in the class. So not just a teacher asking a question is important, but a student asking the other students in the class is equally fun. A student asking the teacher is also fun, but it changes the classroom scenario when one child is open to ask a question from everybody and anyone in the classroom can answer it. So you notice how there is a balance of power, a balance of knowledge that the teacher has and the students have. So this creates the feeling that everyone is considered capable of doing this. Each person is an active constructor of knowledge. So this was a very specific example of how we can introduce a concept using constructivist approach. How we took them from the visuals to what they see in the real world to something that we were going to teach them. And notice how we built in the engagement through the previous knowledge, through what they knew, and by asking them questions that could support their thinking. So a quick break with the Mentimeter link. If Harsha ma'am could share in the chat. Some of you are able to use a scanner. You can scan. This will take you to the Mentimeter link and you can quickly respond. Right, Nitika ma'am, it was trigonometry. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed how we sneaked in trigonometry without scaring the kids that today we will do trigonometry. So I've started with one of the most difficult topics, considered difficult, though it is the most useful topic. So going from the most difficult, we'll try and explore other examples over the session. So let's take 2 minutes. So this is the time we take a little break to evaluate how we think that the constructivist introduction was. So we have used it only for introducing the topic. So this is how your screen would look. Thank you, Harsha ma'am. Harsha ma'am has sent the link for all the teachers. Good evening, Anjali. Good evening, Sukhmani, Vinod. Please quickly join the Mentimeter link. Though some of you have missed what we discussed. Thank you, Vandana. So I'll give you a minute. All of you can vote. Let's quickly check out the results. Mm-hmm. 21. We have got 314 votes already. Very nice. Great. Thank you. So we'll take another half a minute. We'll let all the teachers answer. Thank you, Suma ma'am. All right, so this was a peep into how we can introduce a lesson using the constructivist approach. Now let's move from introduction and let's see another example. So this time we will be bringing the constructivist approach, the flexible learning model, to recapitulating. So we plan to wrap up a lesson on volumes and surface area. So someone in the link had just now mentioned that the application level of the concept. Let's see this recapitulation activity, and the students are going to wrap this lesson up, and they're trying to apply the knowledge of surface area and volume, which this is a problem based activity. So again, see, there is a visual and a problem has been woven around it. It's a real life simulated problem. Such problems do happen. So when you go camping and something like this is happening, so this is a good time to integrate language, good time to talk about their adventurous stories, so that everyone feels involved. So she's trying to determine how much fabric it took to create this tent. So this could be a very simple question also, like we have in our textbooks. But what we do with the question is we break down the question into smaller parts, into smaller segments, and we guide their thinking. So like we start by asking what would be more useful for her to calculate, surface area or volume in this case. So this is the first doubt, the concept clarity happens. So there is no misconception as to when we use surface area and when we use volume. So then they make a prediction. So let me quickly play this for you and see what happens. So the pages are being folded in different ways. So students can check which container do you think will hold more popcorn. So students can play it, visualize it, and answer. Some of them can do it by hand also in the class and do. Next time we give them values so they can solve, they can calculate, and they can verify their estimates, what they were trying to think. Again, notice the change. When we build the containers, build their bottoms so they can actually hold the popcorns. See the common sense, because there was no base, so everything would fall off. So this is a beautiful constructivist learning activity. So there are 11 slides in here, and we can share. I can share this also with you, but this is on a platform called Desmos, and you just need to go out there and explore it. It is a collection of beautiful activities built around basic core concepts in mathematics, which are all constructivist in nature. So they help students move from where they are to where we want them to be, but it is done in a contextual manner. A context is created, and students are scaffolded again with the answers. So this was another example of how constructivism can be incorporated by using the different methods in the class. So I hope that we have been able to do the 21st century skills till now. We ensured that the knowledge was being constructed by the learners. They were empowered, they were active creators, and there was problem solving built in both the examples that we did. The first example, where we were introducing trigonometry, started with some real life visuals. The second one was a problem that we started with. So it was directly targeting problem solving approach, right? So that was our F part of the learning, the flexible learning, as well as the intentional content that we were making. So again, we'll take 1 minute this time. Harsha ma'am, may I request you for the next link? Yeah, Nidhi ma'am, there is a site called Desmos. It's a freely available site. You can sign in to the teacher account. You can explore it to your heart's content. You can edit the activities. You can even create your own. So once you go through the collection, you will gain better knowledge of what all is available. So a quick Mentimeter. So quickly respond, and it only wishes to know that where do you enjoy using, or where do you find easier to be more creative, whether while you are introducing the lesson, or while you are teaching, or while you are recapitulating, or when you do assessments. So what do you find is the most easiest? So 1 quick minute. Thank you everyone for participating. Yeah, ma'am has shared the link twice. I hope everybody is able to use it. We had 327 responses last time. Let's quickly outgrow that number. Thank you, Vinu ma'am. Thank you, Arsha ma'am, for sharing it again. Right, so I think it's quite a balanced approach out there. Some find it easier to introduce using creative ways, but most of us are stuck sometimes. We have 211 responses till now. I think some are still thinking. Please feel free to reflect on the question, go back to it, maybe during or maybe after, and feel free to respond. Yeah? Okay. So let's go to the L part, flip. We did the flexible learning through experiential approach. Now we are working on the learning culture. So what does a culture imply? I'm so sorry. So what is a culture? Whenever we say culture, we are talking about a way of life which is generally acceptable by everyone. We don't question our cultures. We accept them and we appreciate them. So that is what a learning culture is in our classroom. So it is not really something that will magically that we can, it can appear. It is something that we can create. So when we create our learning culture, it is marked by 4 very specific things that we would like to see through some strategies. So one most effective thing is the communication. When there is communication, there should be sharing of knowledge. And when we share knowledge and communicate, there is a growth mindset also. And when people who are passionately working on, answering questions or thinking or asking new questions, then there will definitely be open-endedness and a room for innovation. So again, there are several strategies which each one of you must be using to create their own learning culture. I love using something which is not so natural to a school, to a class, and especially unconventional for a maths classroom. Who talks maths? You can talk in English, you can talk in English nowadays, and you can talk in different international languages. But how do you math talk? So let's try and see how do we encourage our kids to math talk and why it does. I would not like to read through or tell how it helps. I want to try it out and see how it helps. So let's quickly see some examples. So one very fundamental talk that we should have in our maths classrooms. Forgive my using the word should, but we should add is a strategy talk. And what does it mean? It is like if you are talking about elementary students, we give them fractions, we make them compare. Just ask them, which numbers do you think are closer together? So the values. So it is not that they are solving, they are taking LCM and they are making equivalent. They are thinking in some different way. So, moving it away from just the procedures, just the rote memory, just the pen paper, to something that they can visualize, to represent. Because after all, we want them to understand what is 1/4, what is half, what is 3/5. So to make sense of things. So feel free to take screenshot, and towards the end I'll be sharing the links which were the references for all of these. These are all research based strategies, and even the questions that I have picked up, They were those which were, by the research results, proved to give efficient results. So some questions will help, some won't help. So over a period, over such sessions, we can have this rich repository of what works in the class. So, like the last question here, are any of the following equivalent to one? If this one, why or why not? This is a wonderful question. We always have this major misconception in algebra where kids cancel things which are at the top and the bottom, numerator, denominator. They cancel whatever, wherever they like. So, initiating such discussions in the class, such math talk, will ensure that we minimize those errors. Another wonderful math talk idea is to use images. Images work really well. They could be real life images, or they could be math in the pictures. So how many cubes, and different structures you can create with the cubes, and ask how many cubes would be there. And notice this last one on the number line. On the number line 400 to 800, and the arrow has been put. Where do you think it shows this? Where is it pointing? So it is just an estimate. Yeah, and at the other level, secondary level, what do you see? Very open ended questions. So it is just enabling the kids to think, to visualize, to give some answer, and somebody else can help them see what is right and what is wrong in it. Or listening to somebody else can make them understand what they were thinking, which of the idea was right and which of the idea was not working. So this helps in developing a lot of logical reasoning, which we need in mathematics, especially geometry. Another wonderful thing which can work for all sorts of kids, the younger ones, the elder ones, which one doesn't belong? So, like the odd one out, which we always do, which is a hit for reasoning. So, do it with the fractions, do it with the equations, do it with the graphs. How beautifully it can be built in. So, if you have solved a question in a class, you have got 4 wrong answers, put all of them together and let the other students discuss. Learning from the errors is a very beautiful thing in a classroom, and especially the maths class. Again, talking about patterns, different patterns. So these could be fun activities which you do. You enter the classroom, you just do a little math talk for, say, 5 minutes, and everybody is excited. Everybody feels that, oh, I also answered, I'm a part of the class. So they are more likely to listen to what we are trying to tell them, because we have to give them something new as well. And another wonderful method, this is a wonderful way of introducing the idea of a counter example. So suppose I say that an integer which is not a natural number. So they can think, somebody can say 1. 1 is an integer, ma'am. Yes. So then you can ask them, or somebody else in the class will shout and say, but it is a natural number. So, somebody gave an answer, somebody else will find it right, somebody else will not find it right. And this is how they are learning. So this encourages a culture. But there is a very important thing that we need to do. Before we do that, I would quickly request Harsha ma'am to share the next link, please. And just write briefly, what do you feel will be the challenges if you try and initiate a math talk in the class in different ways? What do you think are the challenges? There are a lot of challenges. I'm a teacher myself, and I love being one, but there definitely are a lot of challenges. So, what do you think are the various challenges that we can face in a math talk? Thank you, Harsha ma'am. Krishna Prakash classes, I think you wanted to say something about number system. I think we didn't catch on to that question, or whatever you were trying to, let us know. You can feel free to ask again, please. Towards the end of the session, in next 10 minutes, we will have a question answer time. So do feel free to talk. Good evening, Alka Soni ma'am. There's a link shared. Please try and help us out by knowing what are the challenges in a math talk. And one wonderful thing that a math talk can does is to let you know what the students are thinking and where they are going wrong and what is the concern, what is the core concept that your class should be based upon. So we'll get back to the challenges since the challenges are really aplenty. Why? Because the time is limited and making connection is a challenge. Yes, Roma ma'am feels making connection is a challenge. Roma ma'am, are you talking about connecting to the Mentimeter or the connections of the math concepts in the class? We are open for both, Roma ma'am. So there are a lot of challenges I understand in initiating math talk, but there is one very important thing we need to teach our kids, that is helping them do it, how to math talk. So giving them those words, giving them those conversation starters, as they are called in the educational terminology. So how can you answer this question? How can you predict? What made you prove your estimate in this way? And how would you compare things? Like, what would happen if the diagonals of a parallelogram become equal? So it's a conversation starter. This will help them think. What will happen if the diagonals of a rectangle bisect each other? So, introducing the properties, not just by telling them, but helping them talk to each other. So, this is a wonderful way. Again, feel free to take the screenshot because these are ready made conversation starters. Again, research based, very simple words which can be built in the student vocabulary each day in the class. So, I'll share a very interesting anecdote with you. Whenever I teach trigonometry to my class 10 students and we learn about the way we saw there were images, then real life images, then we build on the concept of ratio, then we go down to the sine and the cos and the tan, then we discuss the names of the ratios and we discuss SOHCAHTOA, which is how we learn what sine stands for, what cos stands for. So my class, instead of wishing good morning or good afternoon, ma'am, the trend becomes to wish SOHCAHTOA, ma'am, and SOHCAHTOA to everybody else. Just like students enjoy talking German when they are learning German, this is what we do with the math talk in the class. So again, so there are wonderful things that math talk can enable. But what I have felt over the years, why I included this math talk as the most important strategy in creating a learning culture was the fact that, a teacher needs to ensure that the students realize that they answered this, somebody else added something more, and somebody else gave another point to the answer, and how everybody's thinking helped them reach the right answer. This is what collaboration is. This is what opens them to realizing the value not just of their ideas but to the ideas of others. And isn't this what, as a world, we are striving for? Being open and being resilient, working hard, but at the same time being acceptable. So, a very beautiful thing happens in the classroom when you start believing in the power of math talk, making it a part of your lessons every day. So, moving from this, we'll go to the last one, FLIP. I was the intentional content, which is a core part of everything we do. When we plan an activity, when we plan an introduction, or we do some math talk, the intentional content is always there. So now, after we have done so much, assessment remains a core part. So definitely it is not a score or it is not even a grade. And it is not just for the students. It is for the practice, the teaching, learning practice. It is definitely not for a teacher also. because a teacher may be a successful teacher with a particular group, and the results might not be so comparable with a different group. That is why flexibility in the way we approach concepts, flexibility in the way the students approach concepts. So again, there are several ways for productive assessments. I'm going to talk about just one, and I just got some beautiful examples to show. So these are again ready-made things you can use. So when we say assessment, a formative assessment is what basically we try to merge in with our instruction. So an exit ticket is a wonderful concept. And there are some beautiful models that each subject can incorporate when they are doing a math ticket. So notice this last one. It says circle the correct answer. So this is a very basic thing. What to be measured, what not to be measured. Notice this. How do you feel about the skill? So building on the different diversity of learners. Somebody just likes to tick mark. Somebody would like to give you a thumbs up and something else. And let's look at the first one. Again, the content is beautifully built in the assessment. Rectangular garden has a width of an expression is given, length an expression is given, area is given, and what are the dimensions. So a lot of concepts which the student must have done while talking about geometry, mensuration, and algebra would be built in this ticket. Another very interesting thing is the tweet of the lesson. So if you, for the learners of your class, who like to use words, so tweeting would be so wonderful. So they can just tell you that, this was the most important thing, that two expressions are different from an equation, and how a meter stick can be used to do this and not that. So this is very, very open. And these different math exit passes, they will work for different topics. So a quadrilateral is like something from the real life they can find, or they can say the kite that we fly is a square because of these properties, and the kaju katli that we eat is actually not a diamond but it is this shape. So different ways of analyzing the assessment, the knowledge, the skills that they have learned. This is a very simple exit ticket which most of the subjects use. So it just says 3 significant ideas I took from the lesson. What aspects are squared away in my mind? That means it is there, it's closed. And which questions are still circling in my mind? I did not get it. So that these are some beautiful math exit tickets. Again, this 4 square is very easy, and you just give them a term, they define it, they give the characteristics, they give the examples, and building in the non examples, this tests the critical thinking to the core. So if you ask what works, it's a very good way of knowing what they have learned. If you ask what doesn't work, it's a great way of knowing that critically also they can analyze their learning and they have the skill to use it in the real life. Yeah. So one more of the wonderful assessments that we can use is a notebook interactive. So it is just a compiled form. It's just an graphical form of letting the students put in what they have learned. So there are some ready-made templates also. And as teachers, we can create our own templates. We can encourage our students, the students who are, good at the artistic form. They like to draw, they like to add color. So they can use this as a means of assessment. So this makes it, highlight, the concepts are highlighted and the students are engaged. So some students would enjoy doing this, some would enjoy doing a math exit, some would be perfectly happy solving a tough problem that we give them. But whenever we give them some problems, a tough problem like this, please ensure that collaboration is built into it. Collaboration is a wonderful tool, and peer learning and think, pair, share, these strategies, which all disciplines can effortlessly use, they all ensure that the students are learning with each other, and the growth mindset that we are all promoting. All this All this can easily be built in when we have a culture of collaboration, have a culture of open dialogue. Everybody feels worthwhile. And self assessment is definitely true for the adults also and for our students also. So, enabling the students, a wonderful way is to give them a topic, let them teach it to their friends. So now our kids are growing because of technology. So I just put some glimpses, and this is what a flipped classroom is. So a flipped classroom is just a very small part of what we can do as a teacher, as somebody who is involved in ensuring that learning happens, the 21st century learning happens. So the students present a very short content in whatever way they have understood. So if you see this picture on the left, this is chess. So student is playing chess. They're all playing chess with the software, and one by one they're solving the problems. But how thinking is built into it. This is not a math contextual lesson as such, but this is building on the logical thinking. Moving on, there is actual the knowledge part that we teach, the corresponding angles, parallel lines. The third picture talks about using some concept in a presentation in a real life situation. So these are all self assessment tools. And one most important thing is, if the assessment is part of the instruction, it helps the learner, it helps us. And the final result, the final outcome which we are all working for, the final result, the final score is important. We cannot deny that. It is important for schools, it is important for a teacher, it is important for the parents, it is important for the students. This is how the entire structure, the educational structure works. So, but in order to ensure that, if we could just assess them throughout in different ways, in very small ways, in fun ways, then the learning also becomes wonderful, and it becomes more effective. Since we are able to assess, we are able to adjust, we are able to redo things before it is too late. We don't wait for the final score to know how it is happening. So that was all about flip. And we'll just quickly end with this little video. I hope it's audible. Harsha ma'am.
No, ma'am, it is not audible.
So I would have loved to discuss the movie also, but I'm sure it was something that you would connect when we were talking about flip, changing the script, flipping the script. This is what the little fellow showed to the elder one, that We can flip certain things. If something is not working, we can change. We have to be flexible. We have to have a growth mindset. So it is not just for the students. We don't want them to develop growth mindset. We want ourselves first to develop that growth mindset. So the exit ticket would help you in reflecting of what you have taken. Feel free to answer. And I think we'll open the session now for the question and answer. Right, Harsha ma'am? Harsha ma'am, you can share this link for the
Yes.
exit ticket for the
Yeah.
reflection.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. It is shared, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually,
Got it.
in between, yes, ma'am. There were a few questions about like, can you, ma'am, can you please give us examples for science? Uh,
Yeah, sure.
any one or two examples for science? Yeah.
Sure. So, see, what we did was we took all the basic strategies that we were doing. So, if we start about, constructing, let me just take you back to what we were doing. When we were constructing using these strategies, we were just trying to ensure that the students are constructing. So, while I showed an authentic experience of a mathematics, you can quickly show the same example. See, notice the sail. So once you show the sail, whatever component of physics, the air pressure, even social science teachers can use the same example. Even the example of this mountain peaks when we study, the examples of pyramids. So similar examples when you pick up from the real life, you start building on those examples. And how do you initiate thinking? When you give them a prompt. So it is not supposed to be that open that they are unable to think. So we have to guide them. Just like you saw in the movie, there was put your head up, put your tail here, put your body like this. So that was the scaffolding, that was the initiation. So whenever we introduce something, some experience, some visual, some problem, we need to plan on what we are going to ask. A good question can make or break your lesson. And encourage your kids also to ask questions in the class, not just to you, but to frame questions. So for science, it is a wonderful subject because it is so real life based. Mathematics examples I took especially because it is very abstract. So science, all the things that you see around, you pick up anything from nature and you start asking questions. Once you ask questions, please ask questions in a way that the previous knowledge is taken care of. Then you build upon the previous knowledge to include what you are going to ask. So, and how scaffolding is done, how brainstorming is happening by asking very specific questions. Or if you notice the other activity, this was an activity. Desmos is a platform for mathematics. It has got wonderful activities. Similarly, science problem solving questions. If you search for just context based questions, competency based case studies, you can start your lesson from there and then bring in the concepts which you are going to present. So constructing basically follows similar steps. You present a visual and authentic experience, then you create a thinking space, and then you take from there, build upon it, build upon the previous knowledge. Questions are a wonderful tool. So I hope I'm able to answer something. So I'm sure next time I'll put some science, social science examples as well. But try and use the strategies. They work. The research is not done for maths. The research is done for different topics. Yes, Arsha ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for that elaborated answer, ma'am. A reply to the question. Few of our teacher participants want to know about English language, ma'am. If you can give one example, ma'am. Uh,
Ma'am, again, the strategies remain the same. All the language teachers. It's a beautiful way to bring in some specific experience which the students connect with. So, suppose the trend is to talk about, say, Harry Potter. So, bring in some text from the Harry Potter and start asking questions. When you are able to hide what you are learning into something which they are interested in, then learning happens automatically. So when you are trying to teach them some specifics of the language, please bring in experiences, bring in topics which are of their interest. You understand, a maths teacher cannot always bring in that interesting topic. So maths teachers have to depend on some specific tools. But for language subjects, the entire world is open. They read newspapers each day. All the schools have got school editions, the student editions, and they are crafted beautifully. So right from encouraging reading to writing and to finding things in the newspaper, it's a wonderful experience that they have in their hands. And whatever languages are doing, it is very much authentic because they use language each and every day. There is nothing that they can do without a language. So start, just sit with your group. The teachers need to think. We need to sit up. When research gives us 5 things, now we need to filter it down. So start looking for just smaller activities, but build them with this, that outcome in mind, that students need to be active constructor. It is not active engagement. It is they are constructing, they are writing, they are producing something. So, like the Bloom's taxonomy takes from knowledge to creation, that is what we are trying to do with all these examples. So, even when we were doing exit tickets, even when we were doing notebook interactives, again, English notebook interactives, create on grammar. These exit tickets, anyone can create in any subject. And the internet is full of examples. So feel free today to explore, look for exit tickets, look for notebook interactives, and students can summarize. Like there are beautiful templates that we get for character sketches. So right from a class 5 kid to a class 12th kid, there are wonderful examples they can use. Yeah, so let's hope everybody can use them in the class.
Yeah, definitely, ma'am. Thank you for that elaborated reply to our teachers' queries, ma'am. Thank you, Miss Neha Bhaguna, for a very engaging, informative, and wonderful, involving session for our community of teachers. I'm sure that our teachers have got a lot and lot of takeaways from this session. Thank you so much, all the participants, for engaging with us today. To register for more such upcoming webinars, please do visit my center. Thank you, Bhaguna, ma'am.
Thank you so much.